The sequels to the Avatar movie were originally announced in 2010 and yet did not start to release until 2022. And why is that, you ask? Because James Cameron is insane. The first issue that caused a delay, the man was determined to go to the bottom of the Mariana Trench to supposedly capture footage for the Avatar sequels. And so of course he had to help build the Deep Sea Challenger and go to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. I am fairly certain that was a lie because none of this footage actually made it into the film, but that was his excuse. The next reason he's insane is because he wanted to make the film entirely water-based. But what's the problem with that, you ask? Well, you see, motion capture technology does not work underwater. So how did he get around that? Well, of course, he helped build it. So the first thing they did was build a giant tank. And this tank was 120 feet long, 30 feet deep, and held 250,000 gallons of water. And this tank could do everything, okay? So it could actually make realistic waves so it actually looked like the ocean during filming. And what did they do once they had this tank? Well, of course, they started figuring out how to make the motion capture work underwater. And so how they figured out how to work it was using something called surface diffusion, and they put little balls at the top of the water that would prevent the light from above going through and diffusing into the water. And so how did they get this to work, you ask? Well, they used little polymer balls that they put on top of all of the water in the tank, and this would cause what's called surface diffusion, where all the light would be diffused into the water, which would allow the motion capture technology to accurately capture their performances, without the interference of the overhead lights, as well as not having the issue with water distortion. But they quickly realized another issue. Any type of bubbles in the water or on the water surface would act like a tiny mirror and would completely ruin the image. So what does James Cameron do? Well, of course, he has everyone learn how to freedive. And so he had each of them work with a freediving specialist named Kirk Crack, who was able to help them figure out how to actually hold their breath underwater for as long as possible. This actually resulted in Kate Winslet breaking Tom Cruise's record for the longest underwater breath hold for a movie, which she held her breath for over 7 minutes. And keep in mind, this was not limited to just the cast. The crew also had to be holding their breath the entire time. So if there was somebody holding a camera down there, they had to be holding their breath. Somebody holding a light had to be holding their breath. James Cameron himself had to be holding his breath. In addition to this issue, though, they had another one, and that was that they were going to film scenes underwater and above water. So they needed both types of performance capture to work properly at the same time and be in sync with each other, so that when people were half underwater, half above water, they both had to work. And so they had to figure out how to actually utilize and merge two different types of performance captures at the same time. But there was another issue that caused delays with filming, and that was James Cameron's own issue with perfection. You see, James Cameron back in 2006 said he wanted to do 2 sequels for the Avatar movie if it was successful. Plot twist, it was. And so, of course, those 2 movies were greenlit as soon as the first one came out, with Avatars 2 and 3 being given a tentative release date of 2014 and 2015, respectively. But then Avatar became the highest grossing film of all time, and so what did the studio do? They said, let's go ahead and greenlight 4 and 5 at the same time. And so what did James Cameron do? He said, we have to write all of the scripts, all 4 of them, at the same time before we even start filming, or it's not going to be good. Apparently, he was insistent on this as he wanted it to be perfect and wanted to make sure there was no inconsistencies or plot holes, and he felt that writing them all simultaneously would help solve that issue, which I kind of do agree with him, not gonna lie. The other issue, of course, with his perfectionism, though, is he actually threw out the first script they had already worked 130 pages, said it was not good enough, and completely trashed it and started over. And so all 4 scripts were not completed until late 2016, which is when filming actually began. But of course, after the scripts were done, they then had to go figure out all of that performance capture issue that I talked about a minute ago. In addition to the scripts needing to be done, he was also insistent that they actually film both Avatar 2 and Avatar 3 simultaneously back to back, which further caused some delays but also made sure that everything was pretty synchronous. But as if that wasn't enough, something happened in the middle of filming. What was it? Yes, the 2020 pandemic. But they were filming in New Zealand at the time, and they had actually had it rather contained there, so they got special permission to undergo a 2-week quarantine, and they were actually the very first major film, to actually resume production during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so finally, the film was released in December of 2022, and it became the 3rd highest grossing movie of all time. The film made over $2.3 billion at the box office and became James Cameron's 3rd film to hit over $2 billion and his 3rd film to be in the top 5 highest grossing movies of all time. And it absolutely had to make that much money because this movie at the time cost $450 million to make, and an additional $170 million was spent on marketing. This meant the film needed to make over $600 million to even break even, which of course we all know it did. Because quite frankly, James Cameron is just that guy.